Are you still trying to get fertility treatment? It's useless, so you should just give up now. I ran into my ex-husband, whom I divorced 7 years ago, at the hospital, and he was pointing at me and giggling vulgarly. Why must I meet someone I don't want to meet and then have to be told this? Besides, look, you seem to be under a lot of stress. Yeah, indeed, I had gained 10 kilograms since I last saw him. It was a far cry from the image of me back then when I was thin, and I probably seemed ugly. James said, eating too much is poison to your body, man. If you have time to waste on useless fertility treatments, why don't you go on a diet? You'll never get married again and you'll be single forever. Mind your own business. James said, don't get mad at me. I'm worried about you. He didn't look like he was worried. I was getting tired of him looking at me like I was an idiot. I knew this man wouldn't understand even if I said it in words. The next moment, he suddenly turned around when he felt a presence behind him. When he realized what the presence was, he suddenly started shaking and shaking. James said, "Are you Kathy? What are you doing here?" I, Kathy, was sitting in the waiting room of an obstetrician's office, waiting for my turn, when I was surprised to be approached by an unexpected person. It was my ex-husband, James Burton. It was the first time we had seen each other since our divorce 7 years ago, and he looked so different that I didn't recognize him at first. Although he was only 37 years old, he had gray hair and dark circles under his eyes, and looked tired. When I couldn't speak to him because of his transformation, he opened his mouth again with a condescending smile on his face. James said, "Are you still trying to get fertility treatment? It's useless, you should just give up now." With that, he started giggling and laughing vulgarly while pointing at me. The sharp stares of the other people around me fell on him. He didn't seem to understand that I was saying things that should never be said in a hospital, or even anywhere else for that matter. I responded, amused by the ridiculousness of the situation. "We're not doing fertility treatments anymore. For the most part, you might have been the reason we weren't able to have children." James said, "What? I've told you many times that's not possible. It's all your fault that we couldn't have children." He retorts to my point by raising his voice even more. I remembered that I had been like this right before we divorced. We got married 10 years ago, and for the next 3 years until we divorced, it was a story that kept repeating itself. He had the old-fashioned knowledge that infertility was caused only by women, and he assumed that it was my fault that we could not have children, and we always fought. I don't know if it was a long time ago, but now that science has advanced, I'm sure there are plenty of tests that can be done. I sighed that nothing seems to have been done by the looks of it. My ex-husband, oblivious to my sigh, continued his statement. James said, "Damn, if it were true, I was going to have 3 or 4 babies, but it was a terrible misfortune." Selfish as ever. Apparently, after all these years, his thinking has not changed. He is the eldest son and was born into a family blessed with children for generations, so he thought it was natural to have 3 or 4 children. However, he was frustrated that I had never been blessed with children. But I was frustrated, too. Now I thank God I didn't have your child. Even if I had, I don't think you would have been able to raise a child with love. James said, "Don't make assumptions. Of course, I'm going to let them take care of me in the future, so of course I'm going to raise them lovingly and well. God, I'm so thankful still." Yes, this man wanted a lot of children because he wanted his children to take care of him in the future. Fundamentally, he is spitting out the wrong idea of what parental love looks like. I still remember how my love for my ex-husband completely cooled when I found out he thought this way. This man does not love his children. He is a lonely person who only thinks in terms of his own gain and loss. After I realized this, I became so sick and tired of being held by this man that my marriage was in ruins. Then a short time later, he cheated on me and got the other woman pregnant. I cried in frustration when he told me that I was the reason for his infertility. It was not long after that the divorce was finalized. "Oh, by the way, are you still seeing that woman?" James said, "Yes, of course. And she's pregnant again. I'm here today for a checkup, which is a far cry from you not being able to have one." I had heard through the grapevine that he had married the woman with whom he had an affair after my divorce. I was honestly surprised that she was still married to such a man. James said, I mean, really, there's no point in you trying to get fertility treatment, no matter how much you try. Look, you seem to be under a lot of stress. Oh, this? He pointed at my big belly and laughed. I had certainly gained 10 kilograms since the last time I saw him. Apparently, he thought that my fertility treatments were not going well and that the stress of the treatments was causing me to overeat. James said, eating too much is poison to your body. If you have time to waste on fertility treatments, why don't you go on a diet? Mind your own business. Don't get mad at me. I'm just trying to look out for you. Oh, yeah, he didn't look worried at all. The corners of his eyes are down and the corners of his mouth are up. I was fed up with him looking at me like I was an idiot. I was sick and tired of it, so I decided to tell him the truth. I remarried 6 months after your divorce. I have a child with him in my belly. I am pregnant. When I told him this fact, he was silent for a while, his eyes fluttering and blinking. Apparently, he couldn't seem to get his head around it. After a while, he would argue with me in a shaky voice. James said, Hey, what are you talking about? There's no way you can get pregnant. Don't try to cover up your weight gain with a lie that's so obvious. Why should I lie about it? I'm actually pregnant. James said, No, you can't be. There must be some mistake. He was upset and ranting about my pregnancy, and I was listening in amazement. In the midst of this awkward atmosphere, a shadow approached me and a 6-year-old boy hugged me. Mom, who is this guy? This man is an old acquaintance of your mother's. He hugged me. I give a straightforward description of my ex-husband to Sam, the child who hugged me. My ex-husband, the person in question, could not hide his confusion at the sudden appearance of my son. Whose child is that? You didn't listen to me? He is my son. I almost lost my temper, thinking that he had not been listening to me all this time. But I finally decided that I was ready to listen to him, so I decided to tell him the story of my divorce and everything that had happened so far. I already told you that I remarried 6 months after I divorced you. I gave birth to this baby the year after that. James said, Don't lie to me. Even if you got married, you are incapable of having a child, so the child must be your stepson from your second marriage. I won't be deceived. I don't see any reason to cheat you. I have another daughter who is 3 years old. My baby is 8 months old, and I'm going to be a mother of 3 when it's born. That's a lie. This is all your fantasy. You really are out of your depth, aren't you? Mom, this man scares me. James, this can't be. This is impossible. There's no way you could be pregnant. It's all a mistake. He went crazy, scratching his head and staring at me with piercing eyes. The fact that I was pregnant was so hard for him to accept. I got pregnant and gave birth to a child. This means that the reason why my ex-husband and I could not have a child was on his side. He must have been aware of this, but he seemed to have a hard time accepting it. I've had numerous tests done, and the doctors tell me there's nothing wrong with me. James, you still say that, you lying bitch. Hey, you can say whatever you want about me at this point, but you really should get yourself checked out. With all the advances in medicine nowadays, there might be a way to cure you. I offered my advice with the best of intentions. There had to be a reason why he and I couldn't have children. If we just weren't compatible, there would be no problem. They say that children are a gift, and that may be the case. But if, by any chance, there was something related, he should have a thorough examination before it is too late. He is a man that I loved once. I am disgusted, but that does not mean I want him to be unhappy. However, my wish was vain, and my ex-husband, while perspiring greasily, had regained his obnoxious smile as before. James said, How wrong you are. We're pregnant with our 4th child right now. How can I be the cause of your infertility? I've told you many times that such assumptions are the most dangerous. James, that's pretty much it. He shouts loudly as if to interrupt our persuasion. However, his expression with greasy sweat on his face is as critical as ever, and it looks as if he is deliberately raising the volume of his voice, not to argue with me, but to talk himself out of it. He is trying to convince himself that he is not to blame, and that everyone around him is to blame. His insistence continues. James, even if you marry him, it's going to cost a lot of money and it's going to be hard. With that said, he no longer looks at us, but at his own emaciated hands. This is like revealing his own lack of ability to make a living. Raising 4 children is certainly not easy, and with 4 children, the money required will naturally be extraordinary. It is not easy to raise 4 children. I know that they must not be living a very financially comfortable life. Your face looks so tired. James said, I'm fine, I make a lot of money. Much more than your husband. I don't think so. James, what are you, a sore loser? You're pathetic. You know what I get paid. Sure I do. But that means your salary hasn't gone up much in the last 7 years. Then you can't be making more than my husband. James, what do you mean? He was puzzled when I assured him about the salary. He believes that a man's worth is determined by his money. In other words, he wants to mount some nonsense that he's a great guy who makes a lot of money, and that he's better than your husband. But I turn my hand and guide his gaze behind me. Quietly, I stand behind him to introduce him to the person who has been watching us since earlier. He turns around with a dubious look on his face and freezes when he sees the face of the person standing behind him. It was someone he knew well. I'll introduce you. This is my husband. When I called out to my husband, he took a beat before addressing him in a quiet, yet clearly hostile, low voice. It seems that my husband is quite angry with him for insulting me. Jack, hi. I am Kathy's husband, and my name is Jack. James, oh, you are. James starts wobbling and shaking. I let my gaze wander around as if looking for help, but the only person here is the patient who heard our conversation from earlier and looks at James with white eyes. Jack closes the distance to James, who is isolated and unattached, at once more than necessary, and lets his glare be heard. Since Jack is taller than James, he looks down on him from above. James's body is shaking and his knees are bent, so Jack is even higher and lower. James may be trying to speak, but his voice is too terrified to be heard, and only the clattering of his back teeth echoes in the waiting room. The only sound that echoed in the waiting room was the clattering of his back teeth. Jack acted as if he didn't notice them at all and began to speak. James Barton, I believe? I've heard a lot about you. James said, oh, yes, that's right. This is different. James squeezes out the words in a thin voice. But Jack pretends not to hear and continues the conversation. Jack, oh, yeah, you were talking about my salary, right? It is true that I am only an office worker. Have you heard of Sky Construction? I'm just allowed to be the general manager there. James, oh. Sky Construction. It is one of the largest construction companies in the United States. Even though Jack had never spoken to James directly, he was well known to everyone in the industry. When James heard the name of the company, he finally couldn't stand up and fell on his buttocks. Jack, you are shaking. Do you have a cold? I remember I heard that you work for Salt Construction. You must be tired from your field work. Take it easy. Salt Construction is a subcontractor of Sky Construction, where James worked. Even though it was a subcontractor, it was a large company, and the pay was not bad, something James was proud of. However, it seems that the salary has not increased much since the divorce, so James must not have held a significant position. A department manager at a large company and a normal employee at a subcontractor. The difference was nothing to compare. Jack's income was ridiculously high, at a level that would allow me to be a stay-at-home mom and have 3 kids, and still have a wealthy life. To James, who believes that salary is the absolute status of a man, Jack must be like a god. James continued to openly insult me without realizing that he was being watched right behind me by my husband, who is such a much higher being. As I was looking at my trembling James with pity, a woman approached me and said to my James, "What are you doing sitting there like that? You are. It was someone I would never forget. It was James's affair that caused us to divorce 7 years ago. It was the woman James had cheated on her with, Sarah Burton. Sarah said, "Oh, it's you. It's been a while. Hello." She spoke to me without any bad feelings, which was the same as 7 years ago. I give her only the barest of replies and observe her. Her long, well-groomed blonde hair is tousled and her smiling face is certainly a beauty. However, I could see that she was wearing heavy makeup to disguise the deterioration of her skin when I looked closer. And as I shift my gaze downward, I notice that her belly is distended. It is apparently true that she is pregnant. However, she was dressed in a way that made me feel uneasy as a pregnant woman because she was wearing clothes that showed her belly like a young girl would. It is hard to believe that she is a mother of 4. As I observed her, she seemed to notice the changes in me and asked me a number of questions. Sarah said, "Oh, are you pregnant? And is he your child too?" "Yes, I am. He is my first son and his name is Sam. This is my 3rd child. Come on, Sam, say hello." Sam, hello. Sarah, hi. Hello. But the 3rd is great, isn't it? I'm almost on my 4th. Oh. She rubbed her belly and I felt uncomfortable. The way she rubbed her belly made her look more like a child showing off her new accessory. To begin with, there was something wrong with her when she was chatting with somebody when her husband was like this. My husband must have noticed the discomfort. He moved from in front of James to stand next to me. Jack said, "Nice to meet you. My name is Jack, Kathy's husband. I've heard a lot about you." Sarah, "Oh, no. You have a wonderful husband. Nice to meet you. My name is Sarah." Jack was trying to say, "You cheating bitch," indirectly to her, but she didn't seem to mind. On the contrary, she even winked at him as a way of greeting him. When she bowed, she bent forward a little and deliberately showed off her cleavage. I knew there was something wrong with this woman. She seemed to be very adept at seducing men. I became wary of her and immediately grabbed my husband's hand. I guess he felt the same way. My husband took my hand back. As we both were on our utmost alert against her, James finally recovered. James grabbed her wrist and in a voice that was still trembling. James said, "Well, then, now that my wife has paid her bill, it's time for us to leave. Goodbye." Sarah, "Oh, hey, I'm not done talking. Hey, don't run." She was dragged away by James, who started running without hearing our reply. The automatic door at the entrance closed and we sighed one sigh as we were finally released. Jack said, "Are you okay?" "Yeah. Thanks for protecting me." Jack, "No, I should have come in earlier to help you. Sorry." "It's okay. You noticed my eye contact and waited for me." Jack, "That's true, but..." "So it's okay. Thanks for everything." Jack, "Thank you for everything, too." When James approached me, I told my husband, who was behind me, that I wanted him to wait for me with eye contact. Knowing James's personality well, I predicted this would happen. I don't want him to be unhappy. But I wanted to get a little payback for James. The payback was a great success, but I feel bad for my husband who had to endure while hearing all the insults against me. Jack said, "But I won't wait for you next time." "Yes, please do that. But I don't think he'll come near us again by the looks of him." We kissed lightly. Sam, "Oh, you are making out again." Later, my husband heard about James's family through someone else. It seems that Sarah was famous for her bad taste in men, and even after she married James, she was playing around with several men, and she was pregnant with a different man's child each time. All 4 of her children are apparently not related to James, and the children he is working so hard to raise are not his. It seems that the only one who is unaware of this is James, and whenever a child is born, he seems to brag about it to everyone around him, but people around him seem to look at him coldly. Some people have tried to warn him, but because of his personality, he refuses to listen to them. On the contrary, he says, "They must be jealous of me and cynical." Now no one takes him seriously, and he has become nobody at the company. After hearing this much, I recall the wink she gave to my husband in the waiting room, and I get an unpleasant feeling akin to a chill. So, that wink was Jack. Yeah, she was probably trying to seduce me. The uncomfortable feeling I had felt then was right. But I never expected that she would really seduce my husband in front of me, his wife. I could say she is sick. I bet the number of her lovers is more than one hand. Ugh. I frowned involuntarily. I wondered what in the world could drive her to do such things. I couldn't understand it, and I didn't want to. Oh, so that's why we were infertile after all. Jack said, maybe. I think there was a problem on your ex-husband's side. Well, he's raising the children as if they were his own. Jack. Yeah, that's kind of pathetic. I agree from the bottom of my heart. I don't know if James is faintly aware but pretends not to notice to keep his sanity, or if he's really too dumb to notice. But he can't keep living like that forever. In the not-too-distant future, James's life will surely come to an end. And when that time comes and he learns the truth, will he be able to accept that reality? But seeing the way he looked in the waiting room, I thought it would be impossible, but I felt sad again. My husband, who must have been thinking the same thing next to me, opens his mouth. Jack says, it's certainly pathetic. There's no doubt about that. If I were in his shoes, I'm not very confident I could ever recover. With that, he pats the head of the baby in my arms. The sleeping baby was moving its mouth. I had safely given birth to my third child a short while ago. He's a healthy boy. I tried my best to speak to Jack in a cheerful voice to change the darkened atmosphere. Don't worry. It's definitely your child. Look, his eyebrows look just like yours. My husband laughed and nodded in agreement. Jack says, his ears are just like yours. His nose is just like yours. Jack, his mouth looks like yours. His fingernails are like mine. Jack, no, his nails look like mine. We whisper to each other so as not to wake the baby. He's definitely our little darling. I wonder how he will grow up. Jack, I wonder how he'll grow up too. We both laugh and watch the child's sleeping face. The atmosphere is quiet, yet gentle. I am truly happy to have met this man. I wish to make him and the children happy. Because he has given me so much happiness. I love you. Jack, I love you too. We brought our faces close to each other's and kissed gently.